The TeachPitch podcast. We are very excited to be launching a series of interviews for TeachPitch, a global community of 50,000 subscribers from over 205 countries to date. And for these interviews, we have selected a number of subscribers who have achieved great things. And by great, I mean amazing. Think of former presidents, entrepreneurs, people who've built hospitals, huge non-profit organizations, successful journalists, doctors, etc. And what all our guests have in common is that despite their great success, they've encountered many enormous challenges. So what were these challenges and how did they overcome them? That's what we're going to be talking about here. My name is Aldo de Pap and I'm massively looking forward and very grateful you can join us on this journey. So sit back, relax and download the podcast here.
I can tell you, because in my work as a trauma surgeon, I see a lot of misery. And people ask me how I deal with it. And to be honest, it's sometimes very difficult for me, as well as the other members of our trauma team. But the most important lesson I learned in the past years is that from rock bottom, there's only one way, and that's up.
In this episode, we talk with Dr. Marijn Houwert how luck played a recurring role in igniting his rapidly evolving career. We discuss the highs and lows in the daily life of a trauma surgeon, and we dive into how his mantra, taking care of his people, led him to start an organization helping other healthcare professionals in times of crisis. Enjoy this interview with Dr. Marijn Houwert. The story of my next guest is as incredible as it is urgent. To me personally, it is a story about hard work, skill, resilience, tact, and strategic thinking in unprecedented times. But if you were to ask my guest, he would say it's just about being lucky. Dr. Marijn Houwert is a trauma surgeon at the Utrecht Medical Centre, a research hospital located in the middle of the Netherlands, in, as its name reveals, the city of Utrecht. Trauma surgery is all about critical care and requires extensive knowledge of surgical procedures and how to manage different types of injuries. A trauma surgeon can help you pull through a critical injury or an acute illness. Being a surgeon at A&E is not for the weak of heart. It is a job that comes with long, unpredictable hours as well as with a proper gut to accept that the death of your patients can be imminent. Marijn comes across as someone who's devoted to his profession, patients and colleagues, and has taken it upon himself to write about them in his recently published book Zorg Voor Je Mensen, or Take Care of Your People, an excellent read on what goes on in the daily lives of a trauma surgeon. The book has been quite a success in the Netherlands, which shows that Marijn is not only skilled with a scalpel, but also with a pen. And if writing and very long hours at the hospital were not enough, Marijn also took the initiative to start the foundation Zorg na Werk in Coronatijd, freely translated Care for Those Who Care for You in Times of Corona, which seeks to support healthcare workers and their families should something happen to them. Marijn shared his concerns around the lack of protection for healthcare workers in his country and made an appeal for his initiative in a recurring column that he writes for Medisch Contact, the biggest professional medical website in the Netherlands. And to say that his readers responded would be a bit of an understatement. Dr. Marijn Houwert's idea led his foundation to raise over 9 million euros. I repeat, 9 million euros to help his colleagues all over the Netherlands. Quite an amount, quite a book, quite a job, and what a guy. Marijn, welcome.
Although, thank you very much for having me. And it really makes me verlegen, you say in Dutch, when you say things like that. Shy, maybe, is the word.
But I feel well-deserved, Marijn. I try to summarize everything that you are and kind of the things that you've been building on over the past years. And I think it's a beautiful coming together of things. And we were just, before this interview talking about, getting more sleep. And you were, advising others about getting more sleep. But if you see all the things that you've realized, I don't think these are long hours of sleep either, because you're quite active, one would say, and with results.
When you said it, I have to laugh because I'm really a sleeper. Well, when you ask my two daughters, they always say, Daddy wants to sleep. And Mommy is the person in the house who doesn't need really much of sleep. But when it's necessary, I can do with a few hours, yes.
With a few hours. How many hours on average would you say you sleep a night?
I prefer to sleep 7 or 8 hours. But when, like in the beginning of the foundation, I think Sander, the guy who I started the foundation with, and we worked 7 days a week. And when we're not working, we're falling asleep with our phone in our hands.
And in your profession, is sleep deprivation something that happens often?
Yeah, it can, but because the head of our department is really a guy with a vision. So he was one of the first head of departments of trauma surgery who said, okay, I want 24/7 coverage. So on-call trauma surgeons in the hospital, but we're really compensated for that. So when you're about 24 hours in the hospital, then you go home, and get sleep and get rested again to be able to perform when you need to perform. So we're on that part in the hospital, we're really good taken care of. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good, because I can imagine you wouldn't be able to perform if you don't have enough hours of sleep in you, because, things will get blurry and you might get confused, and that's not something you could have, right? If you have such acute cases.
Sure it is. But when it's necessary, you have another mindset. You go in your training mode and you do the things necessary on that moment. But there's always a limit to that. And for me, it's maybe 24 hours non-stop work. Then you need to stop, or colleagues need to say, okay, go home now and get some sleep. And if we need you, come back. Yes. Yeah. So I think we're quite good at that, taking care at each other, because of the job we do. It's impossible without each other. So we need to take care of each other. Yes.
Take care of each other. And that's not a coincidence. That's also the title of your book. Take care of your people. Yes. And I see that on many levels. Now, naturally, you are a trauma surgeon and you write about taking care of others, taking care of each other, during a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So reading into this deeper, taking care is maybe something that you were born with. Is that correct? Because you were from a medical family.
Yeah. My mother is a gynecologist, and my father was an internist, Hussein, in the Netherlands. So both of my parents are medical specialist consultants, were consultants. So I really got, I grew up with long hours work, especially my mother. And I grew up also partly in sometimes being in a hospital. Yes.
Yeah. And your sister is a urologist, am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah, you're correct. My sister is a urologist and my wife is a psychiatrist. So
there you go.
Now we have the whole team complete.
No, but that's a beautiful thing. And you hear that often, because I would say, if I were to look at you, that's of course something you were almost raised to do, and that you do very well. You execute on very well, not only in your hospital, but also finding the words and bringing them onto paper. So I'm just going back to something that you mentioned a few times in preparation for this interview, that, listen, I didn't do anything special. I just got lucky.
Yeah, I can explain that, because I think we should recognize I call it luck. Some people call it being in the right moment, in the right place, coincidence. You can call it however you want, but I think we should be grateful for that phenomenon. And I can explain. I am raised as a child of 2 doctors. So then you're very lucky, because everything I wanted was possible for me. Then again, when I started studying medicine, I was not impressed by working in the hospital. I was not impressed by consultants. And through my parents, I already had some network. I didn't really know what kind of doctor I would become. So I made a lot of traveling, and that's something I always recommend young students. It takes 6 years to become a doctor. Take these 6 years. So in the Netherlands, and I don't think that's a good thing, but when you want to become a medical specialist, you need to do a PhD. And I think, again, I was lucky because, first of all, in my PhD trajectory, one of the people who would do the PhD stopped. And then I got offered, I got the possibility to write the paper, which was the cornerstone of my PhD thesis. I just got it. I was there in the right place. So as a result, my PhD took only about, maybe after I finished medical school, it took me 9 months to write it because everything was there. And I think that's partly because I like to write, also scientifically, but also just because I was lucky. So that's one thing. Then when I didn't really know what to do, but I like to operate. So then I was applying for a job as orthopedic resident, and I got rejected everywhere because my PhD was in gynecology. And in the Netherlands, you have to be very sure about what you want to become. And if you don't fit in the train, it's difficult to get there. So when I applied several times, they didn't even talk to me or know me. And then I got lucky again. One of my friends was an orthopedic resident and said, okay, apply in our region and I will support you. And first I got a letter, you have a nice CV, but we are inviting 10 people for 3 spots. And sorry, but we choose otherwise. And then one day before the solicitation, I got called, can you come tomorrow? Because one of the guys got a spot in another region. That's just being lucky. So can you come tomorrow? And I went, and I was free of stress. And I just sat there and told what I did and why I did it. And I got the spot, you know? I think you need that kind of luck in life, and you should embrace it. And that's not because I'm a great guy. That's just luck. Yeah. And if you're alert to things in your life and you let things happen, then for me, let's keep it to me, for me, good things happen if you look around to other people and you see opportunities and be brave, and luck features the brave.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you acknowledge it. You're not the only one who acknowledges it, because coincidentally, there's another great podcast series which is called The Armchair Experts with Dak Shepard and Monica Padman. It's very, very famous. And they just interviewed Obama. And Barack Obama said exactly the same as you said, saying people who say that luck isn't a component of their success, they're lying through their teeth. Because luck is definitely a component. You need to be at the right moment in time, at the right place. You know, a door opens for you. Just coincidentally, you just got lucky. So I think it's beautiful that you acknowledge that, and you're in the company of great minds. But the only counter argument I'd like to give here is that it's not only luck, it's also drive, because you recognize opportunities, and when the opportunity presents itself, you go for it. You could have also said, no, I'm not going for this, or I'm not going to this interview, or I'm not gonna, open this door, or, I'm going to give up because I'm sure also lots of doors did not open for you. You were just optimist enough to see that when another door opened, you went for it. You went in there and you kicked it further open to your advantage. So I would say it's luck and drive. Would you agree?
Yes, because you need to have to be resilient sometimes if you do things otherwise. As I told you, my PhD in gynecology wasn't really helpful for me becoming a trauma surgeon. Because I believed that the skills I acquired in the PhD would be useful also for orthopedic trauma surgery. But when I started it, I was the only one believing that. So on the other hand, in Dutch we say sometimes you have to leave the road, the normal road. Just go off road and see where it brings you, then don't be afraid. So maybe one of the things is drive, and I'm certainly not afraid to do things.
I would say it's a combination of those two. And your first challenge, you again speak about the attribution of luck, but your first challenge that you've written down is your PhD. And in your book, you also speak a lot about the usefulness, but also sometimes the ludicrousy of academic publishing, of the drive to get published as medical professionals. And so getting your research out there, but also, getting your PhD, getting that academic acknowledgement. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes, I can. As I told you, when I was doing my PhD in gynecology, I applied for orthopedic trauma surgery, and all the program directors didn't even want to speak to me because they told me, you're doing a PhD in gynecology. So it's for us, it's not good enough. So currently in the Netherlands, as I said, medical school is 6 years, and we force young doctors to choose a specialty maybe already in their first year. We don't let them explore, let them wonder, let them think, let them see what medicine has to offer for them. You have to choose, because if you don't choose, you don't have a chance to get the medical specialty of your choice. And I really don't like that. I love academics, and I did really enjoy my PhD. But a lot of people in the Netherlands, in the medical community nowadays, are only doing a PhD to get a registry position. And I don't think that's good, because when you're a consultant, because I work in an academic teaching hospital, so one of my responsibilities is also performing research. But 80% of the young surgeons we train are working in a non-academic hospital, and they need management skills, they need education skills, they need IT skills. And we select our new colleagues with very much nadruk, we say in the Netherlands, or focus, emphasis on a PhD. And that's not good, because surgery is orthopedic trauma surgery, or surgery is a specialty which is with your head and with your hands. So and most of these guys are not doing any research anymore when they're a consultant. And I don't think that's good, because we leave a lot of people behind who are saying, I don't want to do a PhD for 3 or 4 years. I just want to be a doctor. Now let them be a doctor. And sure, it's great if there are other skills, as I said, management, IT, education, all those very important things. But the emphasis on PhDs, in my opinion, for my specialty, I think it's not correct. And then one of my things for the next 3 to 5 years, I will be the program director for surgery in my region, is to try, I say try to stop that, to stop the emphasis on the PhD. I want to train surgeons, doctors, who really like people, who really like to operate. And if they're having a PhD, bluntly said, I don't give a shit.
So you would say a shift from the emphasis into academic credentials to an emphasis on people skills and practical abilities.
Yeah, because that's our job. If you can't talk to patients, if you don't understand people, then don't be a general surgeon. Because you need to talk to people. You need not only patients, but also in my job as a trauma surgeon, I need to talk to my team. If I want to go to the OR immediately, my team must support me. I can't do it on my own. So it takes decision skills, it takes leadership skills, it takes that you take care of your team, that everybody is heard and everybody knows what you want to do. You know? So that's for my job currently as a level 1 trauma surgeon. That are the most important things. Because if a patient is severely injured on the trauma bay, he or she doesn't give a shit about my academic credentials. This patient needs me and my team to save his or her life. That's what I'm trained to do. That's why I'm a trauma surgeon.
That's great to hear. So I think 100%, I think, of course, I'm not an expert, but I do see that if the focus is too much on academic credentials, being a theorist that has nothing to do with the practical abilities that you need to thrive as a surgeon. And I, for one, applaud you for calling that out. Because are there a lot of people saying the same as you're saying at the moment in your profession?
People really like to check the boxes. It is a really easy box to check if an applicant has a PhD, you know. But I think we should look at the person who's in front of you and who wants to become a surgeon. And I think we need a diverse group of surgeons, you know, not only academic writers or researchers. We need people who can cure other people with their hands. because that's why we're surgeons.
100%. And then we go to, the actual profession. So let's talk, of course, about being a trauma surgeon, and which you've also highlighted as your second challenge, that it comes with so many ups and downs, so many challenges, and you write about them so eloquently with such clarity in your book, Take Care of Your People. At many moments in the book I was touched, but specifically when you speak about being in contact with patients who are in some cases at the last phases of their lives, and you having to speak to their loved ones, to tell them that their family member has passed. But then also the other way around, there's also, the beauty of people being cured and people thriving and people literally healing because of your intervention. Yeah, I'm interested in the emotional component. First of all, what does it do to you? So when, one specific example that I recall reading is there's this lady who is in a deep depression, and she decides to end her life, but not alone, right? She's holding her baby. So, and you write about that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can tell you, because in my work as a trauma surgeon, I see a lot of misery. And people ask me how I deal with it. And to be honest, it's sometimes very difficult for me, as well as the other members of our trauma team. But the most important lesson I learned in the past years is that from rock bottom, there's only one way, and that's up. And I think I can describe this best with the case you already recalled, one of my most severe cases. And I'll take you back to 2014, and I was a senior resident, and I was on call, and my wife was pregnant with our first child, and life was really, really good. And then this lady was brought to the emergency department. She jumped from her flat, 3 stages, with her newborn baby in her hands. And the baby was brought to another academic hospital, and the lady came to us. And she had ankle fractures, luxations on both sides. So I took her to the OR. And after I finished surgery, a call came from the intensivist from the other hospital. And the guy told me the baby was brain dead. And if I could ask the lady if she was able to provide informed consent for organ donation. And I was bewildered. I asked him if he was insane. The lady jumped from 3 stages high with a newborn baby, and he asked me if she could provide informed consent. The lady was irresponsible because she had a postpartum psychosis, and it was all but reasonable. And the guy on the phone, the intensivist, apologized and explained to me the benefit of organ donation, and I listened to him, and I let it sink in, and then I thought I need to call the psychiatrist, and who came to the hospital at midnight, and she saw the lady who just had surgery and was already out of her mind. So she decided she was not responsible. And then together with the psychiatrist, we called her husband, and I will never forget that phone call. They were from another country. They were working here, and he worked as a contractor, and he was very successful. And the baby was really wanted. They tried several years. And after the baby was born, his wife had changed, he told us, and she behaved strangely. And he went to see his general practitioner, who sent him to see a psychologist. But there was no time or place to help them, him and his wife. So he knocked on a lot of doors, but they wouldn't let him in. And he asked again his GP, because he was very worried. And again, healthcare institution in our country, in the Netherlands, very wealthy country, refused to help him. And then he asked her mother and her sister to come over and watch her. But despite of them being with her, they lost sight of her. She deteriorated. And in the end, she jumped from her balcony. And the result was a 3-month-old baby who died. And for me, personally, that was rock bottom. When I came home, I saw my pregnant wife, happy, healthy. I really broke down in tears, and it took me about a week to give the situation a place. And just talking with you about it now, again, it brings back the memory. And then you see, from rock bottom, you go up. and we fixed both ankles. Our psychiatrist took care of her psychosis. A postpartum psychosis is a devastating syndrome, but responds very well to medication. And in the end, she fully recovered. And I really admire her husband for staying very close to her and for him giving the situation a place. But after she fully recovered, they went home to their own country because they didn't trust the healthcare system in our country anymore. And 2 years ago, I was a consultant. I went away. I was fellow in other hospitals. I came back as a consultant. And our psychiatrist showed me a picture of the couple. And back home with a newborn baby in their hands. She had sufficient psychiatric support, did well after the delivery. And you can imagine how very special for me it was to see this picture. And it reminds me of the strength of people. And I asked them, with our psychiatrist, if I could tell their story, and they allowed me to do so because they hope that this story will help other people and focus healthcare professionals on the devastating effects of a postpartum psychosis. And this is also one of the reasons that I wrote a book, because I want to tell the stories of the injured patients, of healthcare professionals in trauma, because by telling stories, I can give them a face. Yeah? And trauma patients are far too often labeled as members of the gun and knife club. Yeah? Trauma is your own fault. It's your disease. However, most of the times this is not true. It's just bad luck, being in the wrong place in the wrong time. Yeah? And that comes back to my first life lesson. You are nowhere without luck.
Thanks so much, Marijn, for sharing this. And I can see it still emotionally affects you talking about it as it affects me, because I cannot imagine the deep pain and torment that the mother and father have gone through. And, such a story is not easy to shake off. It's, of course, something that has a deep impact on everyone. I just want to go back to what you say about the healthcare system in the Netherlands, that they didn't signal that there was a problem, right? Because postpartum depression, it's not an unknown phenomenon. So in this specific situation, was there anything that you said like, well, here's where this was not properly seen or not properly diagnosed? Or would you say, well, everyone was just bloody ignorant?
I think both. And our psychiatrist wrote an article in a Dutch journal about it, again, to show the devastating effects of postpartum psychosis, so for one. And I was really worried because they were not from our country, you know. So if you're not able to tell your story good enough, then you don't get the healthcare I would have thought. Because when it would happen to my wife, honestly, although I think it wasn't ended with a dead baby. And that's really, it touched me, you know? Touched it. Yeah. And that's in the Netherlands, a very wealthy country with a very good healthcare system. So it's, life's not fair.
Yeah. Thank you once again for sharing this, Marijn. And there are so many other stories in your book, Take Care of Your People, that I think many more people should read and find out about, because there's such a profound message there of where, the healthcare sector, not only in the Netherlands, but I'm sure also in the United Kingdom and in many of the other countries where we have listeners, where it can improve and where we can do, a better job by being more human and taking more time to listen to one another, regardless of which language you speak, take more time to listen and to see what's wrong. I want to go back to what you said about trauma, because I know that you were also making a point of that. You say trauma is a disease. It's not a consequence of like post-traumatic stress disorder. No, trauma is something really that can impact you and that needs to be treated as a disease. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, because injury, or as we call it trauma, because I'm a trauma surgeon, is still the leading cause of death worldwide for people under the age of 40. And it needs to be addressed as a healthcare problem. And trauma as a disease is in the shadow of cancer and heart and vascular disease. And I think a trauma and injury or severely injured patients need to be more visible to pay for treatment and for high quality research to improve trauma care. And that's also one of my ambitions, one of my missions, to advocate trauma as a disease. Yeah. And the problem is trauma is really heterogeneous, because I told you about the lady who jumped from the balcony with 2 broken ankles, but I also see a lot of patients with multiple rib fractures or a spleen injury or traumatic brain injury or fractures of the upper extremity. It's contrary to, for example, pancreatic cancer. That's really a defined group of patients. Trauma is not, Yeah. And as I told you, a lot of the patients we treat have some form of mental illness and are not able to advocate their belangen, we say in the Netherlands.
They have trouble standing up for themselves, and they're not as eloquent to find the words of what's really going on with them, right?
Yeah, because some trauma surgeons say trauma is not a random disease.
Yeah.
People who are on the wrong side of society because of bad luck or other things have a high risk for getting injured.
Yeah.
And I think we as trauma surgeons should acknowledge that and fight for them, fight for them.
And what's the practical consequence of that? Should you work closer with the psychiatrists in your department, or what would be a kind of a measure that should be taken that is currently not taken yet in your profession?
For an example, each Friday, all patients in our ward are discussed. We call that the grand rounds. And during our grand rounds, we have a psychiatrist. She's one of our team members, because I think maybe 25 to sometimes even more patients from our trauma ward have mental illness. So we need to collaborate with a lot of doctors in the hospital to get the best care for our patient.
So a more holistic perspective, bringing in other specialists to kind of tackle the trauma in and of itself. When the physical ailment is gone, there's still the trauma, and that needs to be taken care of as well. And then, Marijn, your last challenge, and that's, the challenge that got so much traction, and, there was such a big response to, the initiative, and the initiative is the foundation, that's the outcome, which is currently an organization for which you raised over 9 million euros. But it all started with a column, right? So first of all, you're a columnist for, a professional medical website in the Netherlands. How did you get into writing? How did that start?
Some things just happen, because the only writing I did was academic writing, producing articles. And then I saw a situation on how we work together as healthcare workers, and it irritated me. And I went down to my computer after the rounds in the hospital, and I wrote it down just in about, I think, maybe 10 minutes. And I sent it to my colleague who read it and who was at home and called me back in about 10 minutes and say, Marijn, that's a great story. You should send it to Medisch Contact. And Medisch Contact is the platform we talked about for healthcare in the Netherlands. And these guys called me back and he said, do you write more often? I said, no, it's the first time I did. So can you maybe write another column or blog? And I started thinking in my mind. And there are so many things, if you look around in the hospital, so many things you can write about. So again, I wrote about being a surgeon. And then again, within 24 hours, they mailed back, say, you want to be a blogger for us on a regular basis? And I said, yeah, why not? And that's how it started. And then for the first time, I saw how much impact you can have if you write. Because I'm very academically trained. You perform research and then you get a paper and then people applaud you for having maybe 50 citations of a paper. When you write a good blog or column, 10,000 people read it. You can get things done. So that's how Zwick started. As I told you, we as trauma surgeons have a really close collaboration with a lot of specialties. With one of the guys I work a lot with is Sander Maas, and he's a spine surgeon. He's a very, very talented and good spine surgeon. And he called me when he had operated on the first patient with COVID in our hospital. And as he was preparing to do the back surgery, he was talking to a scrub nurse, and she told him, Sander, I'm worried because I'm just a mother with 2 kids. I'm a single mom. And what happens to me if I get COVID and I get to the ICU or I pass away? Who will take care of my kids? Because how does it work? And Sander called me about 9:30 in the evening when he went home in his car. And he said, Marijn, what do you think of this? It's not good because we as consultants, we earn good money, and we're able to insure ourselves for things like that. But our team, the scrub nurses, the other nurses on the OR or in the emergency department or on the wards, they don't. So we talked about that for about half an hour, and then we did something surgeons do not often. We said to each other, let's sleep a night on it, let's sleep a night, let's think. And the next day on Monday, we said to each other, okay, it's not good. Let's write a blog about it. And then we wrote the blog. We posted it online. And we got a lot of response from the Netherlands. A lot of response. And one of the guys who called me, and I still remember because it was 8:30, I just brought my kids to bed, was Gerlach Serfontaine. Gerlach is really a great guy, but also a very influential guy. And he said, Marijn, I read your blog. Do you already have a foundation? I said, a foundation? So yeah, you should start a foundation. You should take care of these people, and I'm going to support you. I was bewildered. And then he told me, Marijn, you're a trauma surgeon. You can do things fast. You get this done. I'm going to support you. So then I called Sander and I said, okay, Sander, if we think this is a problem, then now we should do something. Let's do it. And we have the support of Gerlach and Vereniging voor Arts en Auto, which is a collective of healthcare workers. So yeah, and then we started, and we got a lot of people supporting us around us, financial guys, lawyers, other healthcare workers, very influential healthcare workers, nurses, and then we built the foundation, and then we went to television, we went to the radio, we went to the big newspapers in the Netherlands who interviewed us. And then the ministry said, okay, if you collect €1, we'll double it. And that's how it went. And then again, when you're just one person, you can't accomplish anything. But it's a great team, and guys like Gerlach who believe in the project, and maybe he did believe in me and in Sander. And that's why he supported us. And then all kinds of doors open who normally stay closed for guys like us, So at this moment we have collected about €9 million. We already did support more than 80 healthcare workers or family of healthcare workers who passed away. And it's really nice that we can provide that financial support, and people are very grateful that we're there. So that's how it worked, actually, just by writing a blog, and then Sander and I, with a lot of other people who can do a lot of things we can't, started the foundation.
Yeah, just for the listener, the organization financially takes care of, the families of healthcare workers should they succumb to the virus. So should they become critically ill, or in the disastrous case that they would pass, then you will make sure that the family is not left without an income, and you would facilitate that income. That's what the organization, the support the organization provides. Thank you so much for sharing this story, and enormous kudos to you for kickstarting it and igniting it. You attribute it again to luck, but you were at the right moment at the right place with your blog, and the blog being so influential and then reaching so many people. So I can imagine it snowballed into something it is today, but you kept it going, right? It was your drive and your resilience to say, here's what we want to do. Here's, who we want to help. And here we are, 80 families further and 9 million raised. I wanted to talk about Corona now and Corona in the Netherlands. So I myself, for those who don't know, I'm based in the United Kingdom. I'm currently reside in Scotland, in Aberdeen. Recently, I heard on the news of the BBC that many healthcare workers are burned out. So there's going to be a psychological aftermath whereby, healthcare workers are just going to be so tired and they can't keep up much longer, having worked with this enormous influx of patients, which now is hopefully calming down, then now working with the enormous backlog of, non-urgent cases of people who would not be able to go to the hospital because their case wasn't urgent enough. And it's too much of a strain on healthcare staff. Is something similar going on in the Netherlands at this moment?
Yeah, exactly the same, I think. And if we're not taking this very seriously, there's going to be a third wave, and that's burnout wave for healthcare personnel. Yeah. So we should really take care of our people, and especially all the nurses, because one of the most important healthcare problems in the Netherlands is that we're short of nurses, and not just a little. One of the board members of SWIC is Bianca Buurman, who's president of one of the most influential nursing clubs in the Netherlands. And we need 100,000 nurses in the next 5 years to be able to provide the healthcare. So I think one of the most important things we should do is we should ask nurses what they need, and help them helping us, I think. And for us, medical society is quite hierarchical. You have doctors, nurses. We should stop doing that. We're all healthcare workers together, and we should promote nurses being in the lead and let them help us take care of these problems. And then I think in the end, we will be fine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Marijn. We're almost at the end of this interview. Couple more questions, though, because I can't help myself. What's next for you? So you mentioned you will be program director. So congrats. That sounds like a great promotion. You're going to be able to work directly with new, doctors coming into the hospital. And as you said before, assessing whether they have it in them to become trauma surgeons. Are you going to continue to write?
Yeah, sure. The blog post for Medisch Contact. So that's maybe 1 or 2 monthly. It doesn't take me a lot of time to do that. So being a program director I really looking forward to doing it, and training as a region, not just me. We as surgeons in this region train Generation Next for surgery. That's quite a big task and really enjoyable to do. Yeah. And the other thing for me is that with some researchers around the world, from the United States, from Switzerland, and from us in the Netherlands, we have started a new research collective. It's called Natural Experiment Study Group, where we want to compare surgical schools. So in Switzerland, they're doing surgery for some types of fractures more often than we do in the Netherlands. So it's quite a natural experiment to compare outcome. So we can learn from each other globally, also from the States. And that's a research trajectory I'm really looking forward to do, because it's with a lot of young guys. We really like to collaborate, to work together, and it's globally. So for me, that are the two work-related things, and the most important thing is that I'm a great dad for my 2 girls and a nice husband for my wife.
Yeah, let's not forget about them. Yeah, no, 100%. And it sounds like you've got enough on your plate. I do hope you do not stop writing, though, because I can highly recommend the book, Zorg Voor Je Mensen, Take Care of Your People. Sadly, it's currently only published in Dutch, but I would love, for there to be an English version, so your story will travel internationally. So anyone listening, if you're interested in pushing out an English publication, then do let us know, and we'll take care of it. 2 last questions, and 2 questions that I ask all my guests. Which book would you recommend reading to our audience? So what's your favorite book, basically? It's a cheesy question, but I always ask all my guests.
One of the role models for surgeons in general, I think, is Atul Gawande. And Atul Gawande is a surgeon in the United States, but he's not only a surgeon, he's also a public health researcher and a guy who writes a lot and really gets things done. So although he's a surgeon, he's one of the advisors for Joe Biden on COVID-related questions. And I really admire the way he writes and he gets things done and his view on healthcare. And I would recommend Being Mortal from Atul Gawande to everybody, because I think he describes the essence of life.
Yeah. Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. That sounds like a beautiful recommendation. Or anything else that he's written, right? You're a big fan. Let that be clear.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think you, as a doctor, you should read all his books.
Yeah.
For other people, Being Mortal it comes to the essence of life and death, and how we as a society deal with it.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you, Marijn. And then the very last question is, now let's turn the tables. So you have a podcast series going. Who would you want to interview?
Yeah, as I already said, I'm a great admirer of Atul Gawande, so I would really love to interview him, first of all, I think. And then I'm really, if you wouldn't be able, then I have two other people I would really, because I'm a huge sports fan and I really love to watch soccer. I have two guys I would really like to interview. One is Carlo Ancelotti, the new head coach of Real Madrid, because he's a great people manager. And if you can manage such huge egos in an environment with constantly press and everything goes out, I think I really admire the guy. And the other guy I really admire is, I think he's going to be a European champion next week. That's Giorgio Chiellini, who is the fullback of the Italian squad. And yesterday I really enjoyed Italy versus Spain. And it starts with a shot when the guys are in the players' tunnel and you see the big smile on his face, to the Spanish guys, come and get me, And then when they're standing there together, the Italian squad, and the passion from these guys about their country, really, when they sing their song, it really gives me the shivers. And during the match, Giorgio Chiellini, he's maybe not the best soccer player, but he's a great defender. And he's a leader. All the guys are looking to him. And so in the end, when it's coming down to penalties, everybody looks at him, and with a big smile, he's doing the toss with Jordi Alba, who was the captain of Spain. And already with his smile, with his presence, you see Jordi Alba getting more little than he already is. So with Giorgio Chiellini in your team, you already 1-0 up front. And then I'm going to order his book because he wrote a book, and the guy has a academic degree on a lot of things, has a vision on a lot of things. So I think in the end, from this moment, as a big soccer fan, Giorgio Chiellini.
Giorgio Chiellini. Marijn Houwert, that's really great. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being who you are and, the great work that you've done, all attributed to luck. Being a trauma surgeon, but also being a great writer and, kicking off this amazing foundation in the Netherlands. It's been a great pleasure having you as our guest. Dr. Marijn Houwert.
Thank you.
If you liked this episode of the Teach Pitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our beautiful theme music, Le Grand Chase. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Cheney.